This is a tutorial about how to design a schedule for doing an animated project or any kind of film project where you have multiple crew members and you need to organize the time and the tasks. What we're going to be using is Excel spreadsheet, and we're going to be making a visual representation, and I have divided up the columns in the cells. These little squares and little rectangles are called cells. I've divided these columns into weeks, and we're having an 8-week schedule since this is an 8-week class. And over on this left column, I have started to list out all of the milestones and tasks that are going to be done. And you can add as many tasks as you want. I'm going to add another one called revisions, and I'll add another one called delivery. And again, you can add as many tasks and milestones as you need according to the scope of your project. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking each one of these milestones and tasks, and we're going to be allocating weeks and time to each one according to how long we think it's going to get done, so we can give ourselves some deadlines. Let's start with the storyboard, and I'm going to highlight these cells here, and I'm going to give it 2 weeks to do storyboards. I'm going to go up to this fill color tool here, which is a little paint bucket, and I'm going to pull down menu, and this gives me some choices of colors, and I'm going to give that a color. So I have indicated that I'm going to give 2 weeks to do storyboards here, and it blocked those out. The next one is going to be scene breakdown, and I'm going to allocate 1 week for scene breakdown in week 2, and I'm going to go to the color fill tool, and I'm going to give it another color here. Notice that I have overlapped week 2 with some tasks, because you don't have to do things in a direct linear fashion. You can have different tasks go on at the same time. The pipeline is designing how all of the structure of how you're going to move all of the work and the assets through Maya and the production process, and I'm going to give that 2 weeks starting in week 2 going into week 3. That's to sort of indicate how the whole structure of the production is going to work, and I'm going to give that color here. Let's give that a nice little pinkish color. Now, as soon as we know what props we're going to do, which is the next task, it's probably a good idea to get started on building props and give yourself as much time as you can. And I'm going to give that about 5 weeks to build props. You may not need that much time, but it's good to overestimate if you have the time to do that. And I'm going to give that a nice little green color there. Now comes animation. Animation is probably the most labor intensive, and you want to give that enough time. And animation usually starts with rough blocking and goes all the way to the fine tuning. So I'm going to start at week 3 and go all the way to week 7. We should be done with animation by week 7, giving ourselves, again, we have revisions down here, giving ourselves some time to do some revisions in week 8. So I've given ourselves 5 weeks to do animation starting in week 3, and going, let's give that a nice yellow color there. Now notice I mentioned revisions coming up, and we know that revisions are going to be one of the last things to do once everything has been sort of approved and there's some last minute details. So I'm going to go to week 8 with revisions, and I'm going to give that a color there. Effects, that's another part of animation, more technical part, and that's going to go on probably during the same time. So some people are going to be animating and some people are going to be doing some effects animation. So I'm going to be allocating about 4 weeks, starting with week 4, go to week 7, and let's give that its own color there. Edit and sound, that is something that usually starts just as you're starting production, and is an ongoing process. You're always editing as you're working. So I'm going to start that week 3 when we start animation and go all the way to week 8, and I'm going to give that its own color there. The next thing is delivery, which is the most exciting one. That's when everything is finished and you package it and it's ready to show, and that's going to go to week 8, and I'm going to give that a nice little green color there. And now you can see that I've done I have kind of laid out my schedule, our schedule here, according to each task, and we're going to see when we need to start, when we need to end, and how long it's going to take. So we have an aerial view of just what all the tasks are need to be done.